Both wheels of the scooter left the ground as Axon sailed all over the lip of the down ramp and into the tunnel that connected the hot lab with the rest of Eden Colony. He touched down a third of the way along the ramp, the tires landing with a satisfying chirp that echoed off the metal-lined walls, motors whining in protest. He was breaking half a dozen safety regulations, driving like a teenager a third his biological age of 45. He didn't care. First of all, he was mad, damn it, and a good bit to break a few regs, and second of all, nobody was around to complain. The tunnels were almost deserted. Every adult who wasn't engaged in a service vital to the maintenance of the colony was in Yen's town meeting X and Moon had just walked out on. He flew past a huge set of pressure doors, startling a workman who was inspecting the utility conduits that lined the wall-like rows of fat sausages. He squealed the scooter around a right-angle turn and up the tunnel toward his residence unit. He slowed slightly as he passed a group of children and their teacher bot strolling down the ramp from the nursery, then twisted the throttle hard over to scream up the last bit of tunnel. He hit the base of the ramp with a bump, started braking halfway up and slid to a stop just short of an airload. Doors. He nosed the scooter into the charging station next to a row of identical vehicles and plucked his keycard with its packed safety overrides from the slot in the handlebar. He palmed the card and glanced out through the tram station's observation port. The sun was setting outside, exaggerating the hard reddish tones of New Terra's landscape. The buildings of Eden spread out before him like a cluster of silver toadstools. In the distance he could see the farthest of the lab structures, nicknamed the Hot Lab, where the meeting would still be going on. Nguyen was a fool. He'd known that. He simply hadn't known how much of a fool until now. He rubbed the keycard between his fingers. The main lock into the hot lab was the one door in Eden it wouldn't open. Axon Moon wasn't a man who liked anything close to him. He wasn't a man who was used to it. He strolled through the safety lock, with open doors ready to spring shut at any sign of an emergency. New Terra's thin atmosphere would kill a human in less than 2 minutes. It was something you were either eternally aware of or before you were dead. The common area with its lounging chairs, planter islands, and multitainment consoles was deserted as he hoped. He was about to break a law much more severe than a scooter speed limit, the one law that carried a death penalty, and he didn't want any potential witnesses around. Waved the key in front of the door to his private quarters and stepped quickly inside. Good evening, Axon. The voice was cool female with the slight accent that all 7th Series computers shared. The computer itself, a glossy black cube a little less than a meter on a side, was recessed into a console on the inside corner of the room. A window on the computer's otherwise featureless surface displayed a moving, transparent gearworks, like a clock made of glass, that was Kraft's identity icon, its face in a way as familiar to Axon as his own. It was as much a roommate as an appliance. The Sabbaths were the most sophisticated computers ever made, almost human in many ways, undoubtedly superior in others. Good evening, Kraft. Verify security. We are secure, code word collusion. He nodded at the gesture doubtless detected by one of the savant's many eyes hidden around the room. He sat down one of the rooms, too. Chairs. He had what were considered luxury quarters by Eden standards, but the room was only 2 meters by 3. It would have been smaller if he hadn't been allowed a little extra space for Savant Craft. Except for the researchers in the labs, only the handful of surviving elders, such as himself, were allowed their own servants. He and Kraft had been together since he emerged from cold sleep on the starship 10 years out from New Terra. He'd been just a child then, with only dim memories of Earth, open skies, and plants that didn't grow in a hydroponics vat he sometimes wished. Those memories meant more to him. Eden was home now, for better or worse. Earth was dead and nearly forgotten. Sighed. Kraft opened a stealth-back channel to Savant Frost. I need to talk with Emma. There, he'd done it. Initiated a clandestine communication with the Rogue Plymouth colony, an act of treason that could get him kicked out of the nearest airlock. One moment. Emma is in her quarters. Frost confirms that she is secure. Opening voice. Open visual. Confirm? Kraft sounded incredulous, if that were possible for a computer. Savants weren't supposed to have emotions, but there were those who had their doubts. Certainly Kraft had the justification. Visual communications would take 100 times the bandwidth of voice only, with a correspondingly increased chance that their link, bootlegged on the subcarrier of a satellite control signal, would be detected. Confirmed. I want picture. One face of the Savant's cube brightened into a display. Routing it through the internal network to the room's own intercom screen would have been less secure. Emma's thin, high-cheekboned face turned toward him. Her blonde hair, streaked with gray, was piled on top of her head and held in place with a couple of writings delusas, poked into the bun. It had been years since he'd seen her face. Sometimes he still missed her. This was one of those times. She looked into the camera, her eyes widened with surprise. Accent, are you crazy? You need to see my face, Emma, to know I'm serious. This is worth the risk. Her brow wrinkled with concern, and she sat down. Behind her he could see her quarters, if anything, smaller than his own, and as always a disorderly heap of clothing, rough samples, and scientific equipment. What run? You're not the joking kind, Axon. It's Glenn. I told you he'd slammed the lid down on one of the labs 3 years ago. We'd assumed he was working on biotech for terraforming. He's resisted all my efforts, legitimate and clandestine, to get inside. His scientists are all handpicked and not about to talk. And today he threw the Linhild A-Town meeting to show off his secrets. He was working on terraforming, but that's only a small part of it. He's also been mining the encrypted data files from the starship, the ones on military technology. He heard an almost imperceptible gasp from Emma. The founders on Earth had been reluctant to throw away any science, but they'd also hoped that the new world could avoid some of Earth's worst mistakes. Thus, certain information had been encrypted with the desire that it remained that way until the new civilization was ready for it. How bad is it? He has high-energy weapons, lasers of some kind, I think. He was hardly forthcoming with technical details, though he was all too happy to blast a hole through a piece of hull, metal as a demonstration. There may already be fixed installations on the new security posts, and he's working on adapting them to a turret on one of the mobile units. Maybe he has them operational already. I wouldn't put it past Nguyen to feed us misinformation. She smiled slightly. As though you and I don't know a thing or two about misinformation. Where did we go wrong, Axon? He leaned his head down and rubbed his brow. Unable to face her, this had been his idea initially. You saw the computer projections. All the elders did. 2 independent colonies had a much greater probability of survival than one. We could have told the people. Not and have the colonies be truly independent. Creating a political rift seemed like the best way. She nodded. And now you see where it's brought us. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. You can see for yourself the different paths Eden and Plymouth have followed. The split might have happened anyway, given enough time. It's human nature to cluster into like groups. It's human nature for groups to go to war too. We should have seen it coming. There isn't a war yet, Emma. Plymouth doesn't even have weapons. They will when they find out. They'll be forced into it. How will they find out? She frowned, and a bit of the old fire flashed in her eyes. I'll tell them Axon, if I had to. Of course, there are probably less direct ways. There always are. He didn't agree, but he couldn't argue. He'd do the same thing if he were in her place. Why else had he contacted her? Besides, she continued, if they start on terraforming without our consent, there'd have to be a reaction of some kind. It goes against the principles that Plymouth was founded on, of living in harmony with New Terra rather than trying to make it into some kind of ersatz Earth. He cleared his throat and squirmed in his seat. Emma, from what I saw this afternoon, I'm pretty sure they've already started some kind of atmosphere building microorganism injected into the bedrock. Just test well so far, but... What? What the fright do you people think you're doing? He signed. They hardly consulted me, Emma. You know that I think any such drastic step has to be by consensus. Which is a little hard to do when the colonies aren't even talking to each other. He could feel old wounds opening, feel them falling into the pit of their own differences, as powerful as the attraction that had once brought them together. It was your people who shut down the communications satellite. We don't have the technology to talk even if we wanted to. It was an accident, Exon. The council just wanted to make a dramatic gesture. They had no idea that the satellite couldn't be turned back on. Besides, there's still our back channel through the Wither satellite telemetry links. It's enough to open some dialogue between our leaders. It's too late for that. I've been trying to talk sense into Nguyen for years, face to face. What chance does some voice out of a box have? Her look turned deadly serious, and it might be time to take Nguyen out of the picture accent. He felt the hair stand up on the back of his neck. Emma had a ruthless side that he sometimes forgot. What are you suggesting? We've always done accent what's necessary for the survival of the human race. He shook his head. No, I can't do that, Emma. We're the last of the elders, Axon, the last colonists born on old Earth. It's a dangerous world, even as protected as we are. We can't risk one of us dying with the program out of control. He was considering what she said, which is why he happened to be looking out the window as the fireball erupted. The sound came in. Fraction of a second later, mostly as in the floor, the air too thin to conduct much noise. Somehow, without realizing it, was on his feet and standing in front of the window. Maker's name. What? Pleaded Emma's voice. I've lost visual. Exon. Said Frost. Major malfunction. I have lost contact with all computers and labs for Structure 4. 22nd for this. A major cascade failure moved through all the structure's electronic systems. Emma, the hot lab exploded. I can see flames, so there's a major oxygen leak. It looks like the whole pressure vessel must be ripped open. Frag, half the town was in there. The silence suddenly stuck him. The alarms, Kraft, where are the alarms? All automatic alarms attached to Lab 4 have been disabled per Chairman Nian's orders. Sound disaster alarms. Dispatch disaster response teams. Use my override codes. Even as he was finishing the sentence, he could hear the klaxon sounding from every intercom speaker. Axon, Emma called. What's happening? I can't hear you. The signal's breaking up. Axon ignored her so he could listen to Kraft. Disaster teams will be unable to respond, said Kraft. Emergency tunnel bulkheads and airlocks were closed before the explosion. Open them! I do not have those override codes and the doors have been locked. By whom? The doors are locked from inside. Axon, what? Emma's voice was cut off. We have lost the link to Plymouth. There is an incoming communication. Its origin is the Lab 4 East safety airlock. It was the same lock Axon had walked through only 10 minutes earlier. Perhaps someone had gotten inside and sealed it before the building had completely depressurized. On screen. The big intercom screen on the far wall came to life. He recognized Lil Komos, one of Nguyen's scientists, but one of those most friendly to Axon viewpoints. There were several times he had thought she might agree to be a mole inside Nguyen's operation, but it never happened. He could tell before she spoke that she was terrified and something else. She didn't look well. Elder, I don't have much time. I'm setting this message to record and repeat. Something went wrong with the test well. I told him the organisms we were using were too dangerous. Lil, are you? She continued either unable to hear him or unwilling to stop talking. If Grid grows too fast, Penguin wasn't willing to wait. An atmosphere in our lifetime, he said. She shook her head as though to clear it. She brushed her hair out of her face, and he could see that she was trembling. Not enough time to explain. Attacks organics, even protein units and electronic computers, even the plastics and our environmental seals. In the background, he noticed for the first time a slight hissing noise. Evacuate, now. Get everyone you can in evac transports. Salvage what you can, but avoid the affected areas, and don't let anyone out. Get away and don't come back. She coughed. Her face was white, and waxy-looking red veins clearly standing out in her cheeks. Don't try to rescue us or investigate. Get out while you can. Only you have the influence to make it happen. Elder Yuan Nguyen and Nguyen is dead. We're all dead? Don't. Her eyes went wide. Her hands came up as though to cover her face, then stopped halfway, shaking. She fell back against the far wall of the airlock, her body shuddering convulsively. The camera lingered on her for almost a minute. Before there was a click and the message repeated, Axon cut off the picture with a gesture before he could hear her voice again. He leaned against a chair to steady himself. He had to do what she'd said. There was no choice. He'd seen what was happening to her before the message cut off. She was melting. So that the story right up to the game start. Not quite gray goo, but close enough. Oh no, they parasite Eve the entire collar.
Command control initiated. Food production in surplus. Power levels optimal. Morale is fair. New worker ready. Warning, seismic event detected. New worker ready. Research completed. New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Research completed. New worker ready. Morale is poor. New worker ready.
The fact that these are blinking so quickly seems to confirm my suspicion that it's running fast.
New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is poor. Research completed. Alert! Seismic event imminent. Warning! Seismic event detected. New worker ready. Morale is terrible. New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is poor. Research completed. Alert! Seismic event imminent. New worker ready. Warning! Seismic event detected. Morale is terrible. Research completed. New mission objective. New worker ready. Structure kit manufactured. Morale is poor.
Which one is the vehicle factor? Damn it, say.
New worker ready. Morale is poor. Research completed. Morale is terrible.
Sir,
New worker ready. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Alert! Seismic event imminent. Structure disabled. Warning! Seismic event detected. Morale is terrible. Research completed. Morale is poor. Structure kit manufactured. New worker ready. Research completed. Morale is fair. Morale is poor. New worker ready.
What am I supposed to do about that?
Structure disabled. Morale is terrible. Research completed. Morale is poor. Structure completed. New mission objective. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Vehicle ready. Vehicle ready. Research completed. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Vehicle ready. Structure disabled. New worker ready. Morale is poor. Morale is terrible. Structure disabled. Research completed. New mission objective. Morale is poor. Morale is fair. New worker ready.
Sit.
Morale is poor. Morale is fair. New worker ready. Research completed. New mission objective. Vehicle ready. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Vehicle ready. New worker ready. New worker ready. Vehicle ready. Morale is fair.
Ah,
Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Vehicle ready. Morale is poor. Morale is fair.
Well, how am I supposed to get them to make more children faster?
Morale is poor. Structure kit manufactured. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Structure completed. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Vehicle ready. New worker ready. Morale is poor. New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is poor. Morale is fair.
Obviously, we have to do something.
Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Structure kit manufactured. New worker ready. Structure completed. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. New worker ready.
Curious, where in any other game you'd hit fast forward? But this game is more of a real-time strategy. Whereas the previous game was a base build.
Structure kit manufactured. Morale is poor. Morale is fair. New worker ready. Structure completed. New worker ready. There. New worker ready. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Common metal storage needed. New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is fair. New worker ready. Structure kit manufactured. Structure completed. New worker ready. Morale is poor.
I keep trying to use WASD. But if I do that while having a vehicle selected, it's gonna go boom.
Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Morale is poor. Morale is fair. New worker ready.
Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the timing loop is fine, and it's just the first mission that is screwing.
New worker ready.
I don't recall it ever taking this long to complete this.
Morale is fair. New
Oh.
worker ready.
Okay.
Structure kit manufactured. Morale is poor. Structure completed. New worker ready. Morale is fair. Structure kit manufactured. New worker ready. Structure completed. New worker ready.
Oh, maybe that one.
Morale is fair. New worker ready. Structure kit manufactured. Structure destroyed. Structures disabled. Warning, power shortage. New worker ready.
Why that?
Morale is poor. Structure completed. Structures disabled. New worker ready. Morale is terrible. Structures disabled. Structure kit manufactured. New worker ready. Structure completed. Power levels optimal. Morale is poor. New worker ready. Morale is fair. New worker ready. Morale is good. Morale is fair.
This is silly. One child born on, new worker trained, one child has died, repeat.
New worker ready. New worker ready. Morale is fair.
You know what? I just noticed the Twitch free bits. And hence Twitch is number 2 behind Sid. Thanks for the bits. You spooked when it happened and I didn't realize it was Vitas.
Morale is good. Morale is fair. New worker ready.
Why does this sound like a convenience store doorbell?
New worker ready.
Why does the resonances sound like a normal doorbell?
Morale is fair. New worker ready. New worker ready.
That must have been it.
Morale is fair.
Did we not need the scientists for the lab? Microsoft could have revived this game too, though I think this one isn't terribly different from other RTSs. I'd rather see the first game remade into that Dwarf Fortress style gameplay where you can actually see the colonists, trucks, and stuff. Like the game itself was fairly serviceable if you could get it to run. The research tree was also not that terrible. I just wish it had the kind of Siftu-style layers of unwrapping, though. Apparently Outpost came before Sifte.
New work. You have done well. Our colony?
There we. Do you want me to read the story Yvonne just known in the inciting incident? Commander, recent observations indicate that the blight grows less rapidly at night. We will send our research convoy to our old home under the cover of darkness. We have modified several scouts and Lynx tanks to temporarily resist the effects of the blight. Unfortunately, we do not know how we will be able to retain control of the vehicles before they become infected or what effect the blight will have on the units. Watch them carefully and proceed as quickly as possible. Each Lynx is equipped with our new laser weapon. These vehicles are very similar to those previously developed at our original colony site. Our units must infiltrate the colony and find the advanced labs where the information we need is located. Move a scout directly next to the side of the lab so the scout can scan the structure for the data. Scanning, locating, and transmitting the data back to us will take the scout a few moments. This expedition is a one-way trip. Once our units enter the infected area, they will be carriers of the blight. We do not want them to return unless we are sure it will be safe. The advanced labs have sustained heavy damage and may explode spontaneously. If that happens, the data will be lost forever. We must hurry. Check the specific objectives list for more information.
Command control initiated. Enemy units sighted. Damage warning. We are under attack. Damage warning. We are under attack. Damage warning. We are under attack. Enemy units sighted. Damage warning. Data transmitted. We are under attack. Damage warning. Vehicle destroyed. Enemy unit sighted. Enemy unit sighted. Enemy unit sighted. We are under attack. Data transmitted. We are under attack. Vehicle destroyed. We are under attack. Vehicle destroyed. Enemy unit sighted. Enemy unit sighted. We are under attack. Vehicle destroyed. You have done well. Our colony is surviving.
Gee, that mission was fast, wasn't it? Commander! Data recovered from the expedition shows the terraforming microbe breaks down organic compounds into their base elements. Scientists don't know how to stop it yet, and its growth rate is increasing. Unless a breakthrough is made, the blight will consume the entire planet. We must start constructing another starship as a contingency. The first step of this project will be developing our rocket boosters and launching a satellite into orbit. Computer models show that New Terra has natural resources barely sufficient to support construction of a starship as the blight spreads. We must continue to move just ahead of the blight and exploit as many of these resources as we can. Projections also show that we are missing valuable data about the starship construction. Our scientists have identified a crash site-off, the starship Conestoga, which brought us to this planet many years ago but crashed when its orbit decayed. To gather more data, we must prepare a convoy of scouts, cargo trucks, and armed escorts to explore the site and recover parts of the wreckage. This will allow our scientists to reverse engineer the parts and expedite our new starship construction. We do not know what threats we will encounter, and we must be ready. The standard lab will no longer serve for some of the more complex research tasks. An advanced lab will be built so new research topics. Many of these research topics may be volatile and prone to accidents. Be careful where you construct the advanced lab. The tokamaks have shown that they degrade over time and require frequent repair. Pay attention to them, or they may become unstable and explode. As our colony expands, we need better power-producing alternatives. Our remote operations of vehicles is limited as well. A robot command center with dedicated satellite computers will allow more control. The vehicles will also be able to use more complicated smart routing algorithms to improve their transit times. The robo-dozer has proven to be useful in decreasing building times for structures. When placed on a pre-bulldozed area, structures are completed in substantially less time. Bulldozed roads will allow vehicles to travel over rough terrain much more rapidly as well. Medical centers will reduce the mortality rates of our workers and scientists. The area we have moved into its rich deposits of needed ores, and some unusual kinds of ores as well. However, this area holds a new threat as well, potential volcanic activity which may be a side effect of the blight. Computer projections of what we will need to succeed are shown in the specific objectives list. Be right back.